Oh, hang on, wait.
Oh
Hello,
no.
everybody. I messed up a little bit. Hi, it is May 20th at 7 o'clock p.m. EST, and you're watching the DOVECOTE episode. I put 26. It's episode 27 with
Oh no.
Sabrina Hawthorne. Sabrina, say hi and introduce yourself.
Hi everybody. My name is Sabrina Hawthorne. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am an RPG author. I've been writing since I was 19, but I published my first game last year. I am currently in production on Clash Shonen Battle Roleplay, which is funding on Crowdfunder right now and is slated, hopefully, to be out this November.
Hell yeah. Have you made anything that folks might know, or do you know, name any games that you've made?
So, so yeah, I have a pretty small library. I think the title I'm most known for is a zine I made last year called Broke Wizards,
Hmm.
which is about attending a magical university when you have to pay tuition and you have to like go on adventures to make ends meet as wizards. Um, I think that's the thing anybody who knows me might know me for. But as of yet, I am small time. I'm still working my way up.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because um, I feel like I might have encountered Broke Wizards before knowing about you
Uh,
necessarily.
there is a chance I wrote it for Zine Month last year.
Okay.
So I submitted it and everything. So if you're on the site, you might have scrolled past it. I don't remember if it was one of the games I submitted for the Palestinian Relief Bundle late last year.
Okay.
I submitted a couple of games. I don't remember if that was one of them.
Yeah, that one seems cool. I also read, speaking of, you mentioned Clash. I read through, you sent me an early, like an early draft of Clash, and it looks great. Uh,
Thank
I
you.
love a good shonen game. I think, and I think you've like kind of honed this down to like the core, of what you'd want like mechanically for that sort of thing. It's really exciting.
That's so that warms my heart to hear, really genuinely. I feel like I picked a really bad time to write a shonen action RPG because there are like seven others that are in development right now that are all looking so good. And I just kind of joined the dog pile without fully realizing how full it was. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. I've been playtesting with my home table, and we're loving it so far. We're having a great time. I'm really excited about it. It's my biggest project so far, and it's been a real blast.
Hell yeah. I mean, I think like the thing about making something that other people are, making something similar to is like I feel like at the end of the day, the thing that you make is going to be your own. Um,
Yeah, for
but I
sure.
do definitely
I
understand that anxiety.
It's well, what it is I mean there's the classic like, oh no, what if I make the worst version of this thing?
Hmm.
But even then it's more of a it's sort of a like I don't want to be inconsiderate of fellow developers. Like I've taken a skim through Joel Happy Hill's Dusk the RPG, which is another one that I've been seeing circulating on my in my sort of circles. And it looks so cool and so interesting. And I heard about it about a week after I announced development on Clash. And I thought, oh no, if I get any eyes on this, I'm going to have to really put them back to him because he's doing something really cool and interesting. And I don't want his work to fall by the wayside. I don't think I'm necessarily going to make a huge splash. Like I said, I'm just starting out, but I don't know. I feel kind of bad at thinking of the idea of like being in competition with
Hmm.
other authors who are doing such good work.
Yeah, that's real. I feel that. I'm like I feel like that's one good thing about indie RPG is that like there is kind of a sense of camaraderie and partnership that kind of springs
Yeah.
up, and I think it's really lovely. I yeah, I know like actually I find the I guess I find it really interesting kind of going for like a this is a shonen game, like how did that kind of come about?
So, it's I'm gonna ruin my anime enjoyer cred here. So, for years now, about I started writing games, I have been working on this idea of a game. And it's such a ephemeral thing. Basically, the image I have of this hypothetical game in my head is a ritual game that involves almost like inventing a new type of tarot or like divination of some kind.
Oh, that's fun.
And it would be this very intense thing. And every time I start working on that game, it spawns a different game.
That's real.
And the first game that game spawned was I realized that a lot of my sort of weird aesthetic inspirations for like what I was seeing in my head was the beloved early 2000s Lego franchise Bionicle.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Good.
And so in 2019, 2020, I was like, oh, I should just make a Bionicle fan game. Like that was such a critical part of my childhood. And I feel like I could do something much more direct. So I started working on that. And then it happened again. I started working on that Bionicle game. And I was really trapped on the design puzzle of combat. Because reading through those old books, the way action scenes work is so unique. They don't work like action scenes in other books to me. And so I was toiling away at this puzzle. And I eventually came up with this system of building tension through like mind games. And I realized, oh my God, I've built a Naruto simulator. Like I've built the tuning exams into this core little loop of making bids and like bluffing. And so late last year in like October or November, I whipped up this little prototype. I ripped a bunch of assets from existing manga. I used a bunch of free like shapes and assets from Canva, and I just whipped up this little like combat dealy just for fun. It was the last thing I made that year. And Clash grew into what it is now as a confluence of a handful of like logistical and career goals of mine, where this year I decided I wanted to put out a physical book. I wanted to put out a more robust book because most of my work so far has been zines and one-pagers. So I wanted to make something with like more meat on its bones. And I wanted to make something that was like really higher polish, higher quality. And Clash was the best candidate for it. So I've just been plugging away at that ever since. And I'm really proud that I've been able to keep the game feeling the way it does. And I could talk forever about this game. Basically, it came from a weird chain of events of like solving design problems. And eventually I realized I was making an anime game, so I decided to roll with it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it sounds awesome. I totally hear you on the front of like, because I'm sure eventually you're gonna go back to the stuff that like you didn't wind up making, right? Like that's kind of the inevitable thing that happens. When I was first making my my like kinky RPG Sapphic World, there was another like kinky PBTA idea that I had that didn't really wind up happening because I had more interesting things to say with Sapphic World than it, I think.
Yeah.
But then I like came back and was like, okay, I'm just gonna take all the things that I liked about that thing and make another thing. So I have like a draft of a thing that's like Because Sapphic World has like it's silly, but it's a little serious, and then there's just like the like completely unserious version of that. Sorry, you're gonna hear me messing around with dice. I'm kind of stimming with them.
You're so fine. I keep periodically muting myself for all my gross human noises.
Yeah, that's right.
I get it. No, it's the design iteration process is so fascinating. Because it really is that like design is a living process, and I do mean that in like a sense of mitosis. Like as you create things, you realize what you're creating might not be on focus, so you split it off and you save the seed for later, and it just kind of grows and grows and grows. Whenever I feel anxious of like, oh no, my works in progress folder is so empty, I don't have anything to work on, all I have to do is work on something that's already there, and I'm gonna have 3 new projects by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like it's you because as long as you're iterating and throwing spaghetti at the wall, you're gonna find something interesting. And you can always take it, run with it, turn it into something new.
Yeah, it's a beautiful process. It's also a dangerous process on some level. Not necessarily
Yes.
in a harm way, but definitely in a like, you're gonna wind up with a lot of projects. You're gonna wind up
Yes.
having a lot of
No,
ideas.
it's a storage problem.
Yeah.
That's where the danger lies. Do you have enough computer space? No, I was speaking with my partner last night actually. They're working on a couple of Monster Hearts playbooks.
Oh, sick.
I'm really excited about. And they were telling me about the formatting because they had put in a lot of work to make it look like Monster Hearts, to like get the layout right and everything. And they pointed out a piece of text that was like not placed where it would have been in the main game, and they said I had to put this here because it wouldn't fit on the next page because I wrote too much.
Right.
And I was like, that's, I mean, if you've ever been anxious that you're not a real designer, there's proof. Like, that is, I think every designer I have ever spoken or listened to has had that happen at some point or another.
Yeah, that's real. I gosh, that feeling of having to get rid of something is always rough in terms of writing. Cutting things down, killing your darlings. That's
Yeah, I channel that. My process is maybe a little bit I can't think of a funny adjective, but I channel that energy of not wanting to get rid of anything into obsessive documentation. Every game I make I organize it like Minecraft updates of like
hell yeah.
version 1.0, 1.0.0, whatever. And in that way I can like, okay, I'm going to cut 3 pages of stuff that is completely useless to me. And then I'm going to save it as the next version so that if someday that old idea is useful to me or I want to re-implement it later on, it's still there. I can cut it. I can still have that useful process of like narrowing down, design by subtraction, but I don't have to actually kill anything. I can hoard my ideas instead.
Yeah, I do that to an extent. For some of my games, I have like a scrapbook of things like that have either not been put in the game yet or were in the game and are getting like cut or reworked.
Yeah,
and I find that really useful. But also I change things so often in some of my games that are being playtested that people get mad at me. So,
I fight that
is.
problem. I hear you.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask. I noticed in the photo that you sent me, you're wearing a Star of David necklace.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I am also a Jewish creator.
So I should say, for the sake of just transparency, I would love to be Jewish. I'm currently on the waiting list. It's an ongoing process for me, and it's, I won't go into it too deeply because
Yeah,
it's
of
just part of
course.
my personal. But yeah, I'm working on it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'm actually technically okay. So, there are nuances to this. I'm technically not like by lineage Jewish. Like you could argue because
Oh, sure.
I'm not matrilineal. Like
I
my
have never heard a Jew I respect prioritize matrilineal
no.
Judaism over patrilineal.
It's yeah. Um, yeah. Also, my dad converted, but anyways, to
Yeah.
Christianity. But I still value it a lot and have done a lot of like
Yeah.
Kabbalist study and like implemented that a lot of that stuff into my writing because it's a thing that's
Yeah.
important to me.
No, I writing Broke Wizards was actually pretty early on in my learning process,
Hmm.
where I was still very new to this idea of like argumentation as a cultural value, and it was on my mind. And so the core mechanic of Broke Wizards is to argue with the GM, in order to like lower the DC, or sometimes even in order to cast a spell at all. You have to convince the GM that the component you're using is like good enough.
Hmm.
And from home games, it is really a blast playing with people and having these loud, boisterous arguments over the symbolic usage of a hair tie or a scrap of magazine. Like, it's, yeah, I rarely try intentionally to put sort of my personal spiritual convictions into my work, but I find a lot of use in examining the the cultural values and practices around me and thinking on them as something I can apply and sort of interpret artistically.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that discursive element is like uh uh, there's probably there is so much ink that could be spilled over like um Jewish creators and TTRPG and like the that discursive element like being a core part of a lot of games. I think about like how I mean even some of the like big Jewish TTRPG creators who are like my friends or who have been on this show, um, and how a lot of their games and like the types of games they like to play are not either not games with GMs or games that have uh, a very like argumentative or discursive play style.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. I'm maybe thinking
Yeah.
about
I
that. It's really interesting.
No, it's I think a lot about this sort of like, I mean, I think discursive might be a good word, but I'm trying to think of something more umbrella, because in
Hmm.
my brain, like something like kvetching also falls into this idea of like, I think Judaism has such a strong tie to how we talk to people, how we relate to others, both in a broad, like it's a community oriented tradition kind of thing, but also in a, there are values here about how you approach a person. There are values here and traditions about what it means to have a conversation with somebody and what shape that takes. And I think there's a reason that a lot of my RPG friends are Jewish, because
Hmm.
we don't shut up. We we truly talk forever, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, I feel that. Uh, I'm thinking about the fact that one of our news stories is kind of going to talk about when this specific thing kind of falls apart, or the
Yeah.
ways it can fall apart. Um,
Oh boy, yeah.
oh boy. Um, but yeah, I totally agree. I think like a lot of my TTRPG friends and creator friends and playing friends are also Jewish, and I think it
Yeah.
is a listen, we we love to argue around a book. It's it's been
It's
it's been said, it's been known.
I think the reason it's one of the oldest lineages of a culture or religion is because it's built around such a universal human thing, which is to have fandom discourse.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Uh, Pretty much. Very true. Some of my best sessions have been all talking and no dice rolling. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Yeah, I've also had a minion. Yeah.
Hi, I Spy Blue Sky. Well, yeah, it
Oh my
is really
gosh,
weird.
Elise. That's okay. I'm sorry to derail. I Spy Blue Sky. Hello, Elise is the artist who is working with me on Clash.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm so glad you could make it. I'm so glad to see you.
What's the art process for you like with your RPGs? Because I noticed some really like striking illustration on the books that you sent.
Yes. So it's my process has evolved so quickly. Because I am so much an author, like at some point one of these days I will dive into visual art and really try to train myself there. But as of now, it's words for me. And over the course of last year, when I started actually putting out work, I learned a lot about how to find art, about how to find artists, and about how to talk to artists,
Hmm.
which has been a very handy journey, especially when it comes to like being professional and like working with people in a professional context. Um, so on a game like Yawn, which I really hope we get to talk about, um,
Yeah, we
I
can talk about Yon. Absolutely.
I used public domain art. The book I found online was like 99 Turkish folk tales or like some number of Turkish folk tales. Really interesting illustrations, really interesting book. It was from the 1800s and it was written by a European and it
Hmm.
is about stories from Middle Asia. So uh be be on the lookout. But it was really interesting and it taught me a lot about the kind of resources I can find if I'm working on a $0 budget. Um and then for Bring the Stars Home to Me, I will save my thoughts on the art of that game till we talk about that game because
Hmm.
that's going to be a block of text for me to talk about.
It's very cool.
TLDR, that's art from a very good friend of mine who I love very dearly, and it's tied into a lot of what that game is about for me.
Hmm.
With Elise has been a joy, truly a blast to work with. Um, I so I put out a call on Tumblr, which is my only social media that I have. Um, Gosh, it must have been 2 months ago now or more. Just saying, hey, here's the thing I'm working on. I put in a bunch of technical specs basically into this post. I said, hey, I'm working on this game. Here is the budget I know I'm gonna have. I am looking for an artist to commission for their work because I know I can't guarantee any sales and I want to make sure you get paid. And here's my style requirements. Here's sort of what I'm hoping to emulate. Um, and that same friend of mine who did the art for Bring the Stars Home put it out, and he's got a bigger following for his art than I do for mine at the moment. And so I got a bunch of eyes on that from them. And eventually Elise reached out. Or I don't even think reached out. I think I reached out to Elise. I think they like reblogged it and were
Oh,
like, "Oh, this looks cool." And I checked out their stuff and I went, "Oh, this is the one. I think I have to work with this person." I Please check out their blog, everybody. I Spy Blue Sky on Tumblr.
yeah.
Their art has such a life and a vibrancy that I adore. Um, and so I reached out and I said, "Hey, I don't want to put my finger on the scale, but you should email me." Um, and we talked, and it was pretty clear early on. Like this person is going to bring something to this that I never could. And ever since then, it's been great. We spent solidly a month doing character design work together on the core playbook illustrations, talking about like how many pieces do we want? What kinds of pieces are they going to be? What's like talking with them has helped me format the book, like figure out how I want it to look and the dimensions I actually want for the book itself. And at every step of the process, they have, number one, provided gorgeous art. I have a weekly Shabbat dinner with a few friends of mine locally every Friday night. And whenever I have a new piece from Elise, that's the first thing I bring up when I'm meeting up with people is look at my artist, like look at this really incredible work that they're doing. Sorry, you asked a question that was completely different, and I just derailed
it's totally
into. Okay. I'm really excited to be working with Elise, and I am really glad that I get to, and I'm really excited to be able to show people what they've been working on, because I think they're gonna bring this game to life in a way I could only hope to, and I'm thrilled.
Hell yeah. Question: do you want me to share this Crash crowdfunder campaign?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was actually wondering like where I could slip it in, but yeah, it's Clash is crowdfunding through the end of June. Although I've been debating extending that into July, we shall see. It's got a bunch of cool stuff. PDFs for every tier. I'm going to be doing a limited print run. And if you pledge at a high enough tier, Elise and I are working on some comics starring the characters in the playbook art, which is really exciting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I think I'm echoing a little bit. Oh,
I'm not hearing anything.
Ba.
You sound good to me.
Okay, cool. All right. take care, Elise. Yeah.
See you around, Elise.
Good to hear from you. Yeah, I love the art that I've seen for Clash thus far, and I hope that goes well.
It's going great. Thank you.
You signaled toward Bring the Stars Home to me, Zard. I'd love to hear the story behind that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So Bring the Stars Home to me is a love letter in a lot of ways. It comes from so many different places, and it kind of came out of the blue for me. Like, I didn't realize I was making something that would be so important to me while I was making it. There's a lot of personal context behind it, but when I was writing it last May, which, by the way, I wrote the game for a monthly game jam on itch called the Week Sauce Jam, week as in the span of 7 days. That is a jam predicated on giving you a week to make something, but it doesn't have to be a consecutive 7 days.
Oh, that's
as long as it all takes place. Yeah, so it's a jam for like basically people with stuff on their plate. And at the time that I was writing it, I had gone through a bunch of big life changes all at once. I had recently moved in with my partner. I had recently been in a car accident, and I had recently been fired from my job at the time. And I was really feeling kind of funky, as you do with big life changes like that.
Yeah.
And I decided I needed something to work on. And so I found this jam, and I started working on it. And by the time it was done, it was a dedication to a bunch of people who I love. On the one hand, it is a love letter to my partner. It to put it as vaguely as possible, it's about distance and about learning to close the distance with someone you're far away from. Um, and in writing it, I decided I wanted art from my very good friend Maxwell Cooper, who is an artist who you can find at Odd Sun Art, sun as in the ball in the sky, on both Tumblr and Instagram. Great stuff. I could rant and rave about their art all day. But Max is also a very good friend of mine who I've known for many years. And I had been working on this game that was very much me channeling sort of like a feeling of loneliness and distance from people. And I knew I was going for this sort of lonely journey across the stars as the as sort of the aesthetic core. And my original plan for the illustrations was to edit NASA photographs and recolor them to be like neon and green and orange in a way that they're usually not. But eventually I decided, no, I want someone to render this. I want to see somebody like take that idea and actually make something with it.
Yeah.
So I got a hold of Max and I said, hey, I'm making this game. I want you to take this prompt of NASA photographs rendered in neon and do it the way you do it. I don't want you to change your style at all. And Max provided me with two of my favorite pieces of art in the universe. They are gorgeous pieces. Like really, if anybody's following the links that you're posting in the chat there, they'll see that I use those illustrations kind of everywhere.
They're beautiful.
They're really, really beautiful. And so the game came together as this like, it was a piece of journaling for me. It was me like doing the quintessential writer thing of instead of talking to someone I love, I wrote about how I felt and then showed it to them, which is not what you should do. Don't do that. But I did.
That's
and
okay.
it came together as this culmination of my relationships to a bunch of people who I care about really deeply.
Oh crap.
Oh no.
Sorry, I was scrolling and I got blasted.
No, you're okay. And it just came together in this really unexpected way, like thematically. Because really all I had been trying to do was distract myself from some rough life stuff with work.
Is that way sometimes.
And then it came together and I was like, oh, this is an encapsulation of a bunch of the better things in my life. And I feel like if I could choose any of my games to go like hyper viral, this would be the one. Because I'm just really proud of it. I love how it came together. My partner and I have used it to write letters to each other occasionally.
Oh, that's really nice.
Like I love that game a lot. I get emotional thinking about it.
Wonderful. It sounds really great. I think there's something so special about, ordering some art and then seeing it, made real and seeing the work done is just so beautiful. And then I think too, making a game as kind of a salve for yourself can be so incredible, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about spilling ink, art as a therapeutic act.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Do we want to hit the news?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Hell yeah. Oh crap! I have episode. Hang on. I'm doing 2 episodes in a week. We're having Spencer Gill RPGs on later, which will be fun.
Oh, nice.
Later this week on Friday.
Very cool.
Yeah. But you're also very cool.
Oh, thank you.
So, Uh, do we want to talk about the OGL or Zionism first? We got two choices.
So, let's start with topic number one. Mostly because my thoughts on it are the most succinct.
Hmm.
I can get them across in the shortest amount of time.
So there was a development on this that I'm like, I'm contemplating
Oh.
whether it's like too far outside of the scope of this to like bring up, but it is really interesting.
Yeah, I tell you what, I feel like you probably are more informed on this than I am. I had never heard of these people before you
I had
showed me
not
this
either, to
story,
be
so
fair.
okay. So this is
I
something
know
that
one of these people because one of the good people in this story. Actually, I've met two of the people involved in this story, but they're both good people.
okay.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, so let me get my. Oh yeah, my birds. Okay, I'm so sorry. Intro the interview. Oh
Oh
god,
no, we've forgotten the birds.
wait, what happened to Intrero? Wait a second. Oh, I see what happened. Hang on. My birds, not my birds.
My bird.
And then, of course, Cordis, the
Oh,
news bird, coming in from a nice mountain lodge, just
oh,
relaxing, chilling out.
I hope you had a wonderful spa day.
Yeah. So what happened with Cordis? I should really explain because I feel like this is actually relevant to the story we're about to do.
Yeah.
Is that it was like September something or other, and it was like, there were not many, at least in the U.S., there were not many like major conflicts, as kind of part of the news, and so I was like, yeah, this is the grizzled like warbird, and then October 7th happened, and it was like, oh shit,
Oh,
I gotta I gotta change Cordis's whole bit. So now Cordis is
yeah,
relaxing and
wow.
chilling. It was poor timing, but I think it would have been poor timing no matter what. Um,
Sure.
but yeah. So the reason why I mentioned that and mentioned that that's relevant is oh wait, did that not? Ooh, hang on. Um, the documentation for the second one's wrong. Let me fix that really quick. Because it's supposed to be the response. Uh,
Oh, I see.
I goofed. Okay. So I have to be honest. I have skimmed a bit because it's a lot of text and it's a lot of like back and forth. But there is a uh, hang on, I'm ordering these. Um, putting these in a proper order. I'm a bit of a mess here, but that's okay.
That is
All right,
okay.
here. Okay, and then I'm gonna put it up on the screen. So there's apparently a like Pathfinder streaming group called Waffles Maple Syrup. Uh, they're TTRPG streamers. And there was a big hunk of drama about some Zionist statements made by one of their members. They made a response basically saying, "Hey, they made some pretty wild claims in this document.
Boy.
Not to laugh at something that's so gruesome, but it is it is complicated. Um,
Yeah.
this is probably the most interesting part of this, which is the clearing up what
Yeah.
Zionism is, which they say
This was very telling.
if you define Zionism as Islamophobia, I'm not a Zionist. Define Zionism as promoting genocide, I'm not a Zionist. Define like all of these, like definitionally, this is just not true. I mean, a lot of these are not true
I
in aspect, but this is just
Right.
definitionally not true.
It's pretty textbook. This sort of like defensiveness and like niggling over definitions, right,
Yeah,
is very if you pay attention to people who say nasty things on the internet, this is not unfamiliar to you.
yeah. The difficulty here is like there is such an emphasis here on like maintaining, uh, okay, one, maintaining like all the positions they do hold that are like fucked up, and two, like maintaining their ability to say, I'm a Zionist. However, I don't believe in any of the things that I don't believe in all these things Zionists believe in.
I am a Zionist, but I don't believe in any of the things that must be true in order for Zionism to be a perspective.
Yeah, but also I low-key do. I kind of do. Like,
except that yes, it's really
the things he's actually said have really, yeah.
It. I think the main thing, like opinion, I would have to have here is that it must feel very disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the audience of this group of people. And if any of those people are watching, I'm so sorry. This must be rough. I understand what it's like when people you respect and people you admire turn out to be complicit or even supportive of violence and of the many, many things that are wrong in the world. And I think insofar as public figures are a thing that must exist, I think we should have nice ones instead.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We had a D&D Jordan Leia, who's another Teacher Pchi content creator, write a whole response here. It's fairly long, and there's a lot of chat logs. As I said, I skimmed. But
this seems to be very much tuned towards the people who are familiar with these folks, which I am very much not.
Same here.
Yeah, I'm so sometimes I'm reminded of how much of a hermit I am. Of like, oh, this is big news, and I don't know who anyone here is. Yeah. I did a bit of preliminary research when you first, when we first opened up this document, and for a moment I was misled into believing that Waffles Maple Syrup were the people who made the Jackbox games.
Oh.
And I was ready to be distraught, like absolutely devastated.
That's scary. I do think something that's interesting, at least to me, because like I was at PAX EU, is the PAX EU side of this, which is that like clearly there were arguments before the PAX EU stuff happened, and so like there were panels and there were conversations with like folks who were involved in panels, trying to get these folks off of them because they were both like being extremely rude to Jordan here, and also up to still doubling down on a lot of their positions. Something I identified that like really frustrated me about this thread, who I actually played Monster Hearts with this person GM Monster Hearts, and I played at that table.
Okay.
Something that was really frustrating here was that I find it for mental cast mental Luke's sake, I find it really frustrating that like it seems like there was and perhaps is such an environment of like I can't imagine how this feels for you. Like a feeling you have to say, I can't imagine how this feels for you as a Jewish person.
Yeah.
And like perhaps I'm a bit jaded about it at this point, but like, obviously this was October, so it was a bit more raw. But I do think that like, by the 26th, I think most of us who knew anything about what was going on and what the state had done in the past knew what was about to go down.
Yeah.
And so I just find it frustrating that like Cass felt like they had to say this, like that they had to be like given that I'm not Jewish, like I feel like that's such a that shouldn't be something that has to be said when you're talking about like an ethno state that's receiving pretty brutal and I mean like obviously excessive violence, but it is like violence as a reaction to decades and decades of apartheid and like a sort of slow genocide and occupied people. Like it is
the thing that really churns my stomach is stuff like this. Like when we like if we want to talk about how it feels to be Jewish after this, like after this has exploded into the public eye, this is the kind of thing that makes me feel worse as a person who is pursuing Judaism as a thing. Because when I mean, I won't go into too much detail, but like I think about in the aftermath of October 7th and realizing very suddenly with no warning that the congregation that I had gone to for my education and who I had been planning on going to for my actual conversion was a very Zionist group, and I was left suddenly without a community. And I think about the people who are complicit or in support of this violence using this tradition and using this lineage of people to gain comfort on staff Zoom calls.
Yeah.
That's what turns my stomach. Is this isn't about being Jewish. If I know one organization in the world that loves to kill Jews, it's Israel.
Yeah, absolutely.
It breaks my heart and it makes me feel sick. Really, truly. There was a period where I questioned if I still wanted to convert after this happened, because I was questioning whether or not I wanted to be associated with people like this.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about this is like, I I hate how on some level it kind of makes the people around these people have to be like you know, to some degree, like looking at like I understand why Cass would like talk to Syrup this way, because it seems like Syrup like held a lot of power and was like enforcing using that power.
Yeah.
But also like on some level, looking at like the sentence like I am not Jewish, so I don't know, that like that is on some level like microaggressive, because it's like, it feels like, or I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this, because like I did have a really strong reaction on seeing that, and I think it was a negative reaction, not necessarily towards Cass, but just like I think it's challenging to be like, oh yeah, this is like these are the assumptions that are made of Jews, right? Because of because like the the Israeli state uses like Judaism as a shield, in a lot of ways. I
see what you mean. That is very microaggressive, right? It's phrasing a thing with the assumption of I associate who you are with this state and its government.
Yeah, and obviously these are communications that were supposed to be private, so like I'm not like mad at Cass to be super clear.
No, and I'm mad at the state of Israel for its propaganda campaign that puts this into the public consciousness.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess part of my thought is like, I guess a thing that I would wish here is that like maybe that there would be more anti-Zionist Jewish folks in positions who could be on panels or at least talking to and about these things, because like if I were if they asked me, I would have said fuck off, like honestly.
Right.
I would have been a lot more harsh with this guy. I would have not put on the kitty gloves. But sorry, I said guy with this woman. I keep forgetting. I think I've already used the wrong pronouns for her once.
Oh no.
Oops. But yeah, it's rough. There is another element to this, which I do want to. People have been talking about this. Let me actually just find this really quick. I can probably just look up this and I'll find it. So we've talked about this on the stream before. Let me Uh, here we go. Okay, Momocon. So we've talked about this show before, actually, on the stream. Or sorry, this game, Obojima, which is a 5e supplement that is, I'm using, imagine the, like, biggest foam air quotes here.
Right.
Ghibli inspired.
Yeah. Pastoral and animated.
Pastoral and animated. And first of all, a lot of people have been pointing out, like, hey, this is a very... Why is this cast so white? Why are there no Asian people in this cast? The other thing is that Jacob Duvall is the one black person they have on this this game is is in the syrup and waffles and breakfast and oranges or whatever it's called, and like stands behind their positions. So
sure.
It's like it's interesting to see that I say interesting and I mean bad, to see that like I give a lot of like respect to the folks at PAX U who like the folks who are on panels at PAX U who are like, we are not going to be associated with this, but that there are cons and people at cons who just don't care and are just like, yeah, no, we're just gonna put whoever we want on any game, and that'll be fine.
Yeah, this is, I think, a large part of, maybe not a large part, but a not insignificant part of why I don't generally engage with RPGs as a medium of theater, like actual play and the like, because I think I have a paranoia about celebrity.
Yeah.
I think the core of which is probably pretty understandable for anybody who lives in a post-internet world. But I think there's this, I don't know what I'd call it. There's a phenomenon that occurs with small-time public figures. Your classic niche internet micro-celebrity, if you will.
Yeah.
Where, because we are not a huge production line away from these people, like we would be with, cable TV or what have you. And because of, parasociality, scary, it gets so hard to be into it as a fan, like logistically, without ending up supporting someone pretty directly who's going to put that support towards something you find abhorrent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, not a lot of people are pirating unprepared casters, right? But a lot of people are pirating Dimension 20 or whatever. And I don't know. I don't know if I really have a thesis. I think it makes me think about why I don't generally engage with this sort of thing, because it forces you to pay such close attention to everyone who you are giving your attention to that it becomes really exhausting to even try to be halfway ethical with where you put your money and your attention. And yeah, it's a bummer, I think, is my end statement there.
Yeah, and I think it also becomes tricky with, like, I mean, this is kind of this is a microcosm of, like, or not a microcosm, this is a smaller version of, like, talks of, like, corporate divestment or like, university divestment. Like, you pay your ticket, you pay your tuition, you pay your taxes, and then it goes towards things that you might not necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, sometimes that's good because those things are like, uh, I don't know, gay people on panels or like, you know, like some people might disagree with things that are just normal, but
Right.
nonetheless, like I think that I think it's important to think about. Uh, I guess we are all like on some level complicit in these things when we
Yeah.
when we spend our money, and it can be difficult to
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah. Unjust systems intentionally erase the line between victim and perpetrator.
Yeah,
And that's something you have to be cognizant of the whole time.
absolutely. Um, okay. Do we want to maybe take a break before our second story?
Yes. Let's, if it would be all right, take 10. I have suddenly a couple of dogs I have to take care of.
Hell yeah. Let's take 10. We will be back at I guess it'll be 06. See you in a bit.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hello, we are back with the Dovecote with Sabrina Hawthorne. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
We're gonna talk about the OGL.
Oh, cutting edge journalism.
Cutting edge journalism that I have not been able to pay for, unfortunately, yet. So you're gonna have to explain it to me.
So
because you were able to read it.
Thankfully, there's not a lot here that is like. There's not a whole lot to it. This is a pretty. This is from. This is from Lynn Kodega, who is the journalist who broke the OG last year. From Rascal News, which.
Oh, hello. I think your mic cut out. We were having this issue before the stream. It's not a big deal. Hello?
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Okay, great. My computer sort of froze there for a sec, but I think we're good.
You're explaining the OGL.
Yeah, so there has been an update to the OGL, which is that it's dead. It seems as if Wizards of the Coast is releasing their most recent 5th edition SRD into Creative Commons next year. This is, according to Lynn, 5.2, which I think is the SRD for the like D&D Next online iteration of the edition.
Right.
I believe that's with a grain of salt. I might be wrong on that. And that's really the whole story. It just seems that they have given up on the OGL as a thing. The article also covers a bit of the history of the OGL, that the time that it was released, it was actually pretty good. Like it was pre-Creative Commons when it was released, so having this amount of freedom for third-party artists was really, really nice. And kind of how being owned by a conglomerate made that worse.
Right.
And I brought the topic to you, not necessarily because I'm particularly invested in the story of Wizards of the Coast. Anyone who follows me knows that I make a point not to really talk about D&D very much. But I wanted to use this as a springboard to talk about intellectual property and about copyright, because I have a lot of thoughts about those things. As anyone who knows me can attest, I am a card-carrying pinko. I'm very big on all of the cool things like freedom of information and XYZ. But I also think a lot about being an author. Because I dread it. Because I love making things, and I have what I think is the worst fatal flaw, which is ambition. I want to be successful, and I want people to know my work and think well of it.
That's real.
And so I think a lot about it's something I have had to come to terms with as an adult. Like, I say as an adult as if I haven't been one for years and years. But as I'm like coming into my career and trying to build something, I've had to come to terms with what it is that I want and what it is that I don't want out of trying to get my work out there. And so I saw this article about the OGL and about finally releasing the 5th edition D&D rules into, I mean, one step closer to the public domain, right? And it got me thinking about how I want my work to be treated and how I think of my own copyright on my works, which is basically that I don't like that my face needs to be attached to them. Right. For many years now, I've been of the opinion that I the way I put it to friends is that I want to be an author, not an influencer.
Hmm.
I think a lot about my like career icons are people like Ursula Le Guin or Avery Alder or even Tolkien to a degree, where I have this maybe kind of old fogey idea of authorship of you know who made the thing you like, and you can look into who they are and what they think of things. But at the end of the day, the thing you like about them is that they made a piece of art that resonates with you and that you have things to say about.
Yeah.
And I don't know. As usual, I start talking and I don't necessarily have a thesis, but
Okay.
I just think a lot about this because I mean, here I am on the stream and I'm having a blast. I want to be so clear, but I'm here because I don't have a publicist.
Right.
You know, I'm here because I don't have somebody who I can pay to do this for me. Where what I want is for people to be talking about the things I make. But in order to get that to happen, people have to be talking about me first. And that's not very fun.
Yeah. On the topic of coming on here because you don't have a publicist, a major, let's say a major video games content creator who was getting into TTRPGs put out a call where they were like, "Hey, I'd love to come on people's TTRPG shows," and I reached out. Uh, and
Really?
you want to know what they said?
Yeah.
They said they had to prioritize based on audience size, and that they would not be coming on. um, and
Dang.
like, I think that you're right to some degree. Like, I don't think that coming onto the DOVECOTE is a very good career move. I think that anyone who anyone who works in any publicist would tell you that you should not be on here. Not necessarily. You know, I'm perhaps being a bit mean to my work, but you know what I mean. Like, I think
I do.
yeah.
It's really the state of, unfortunately, I have to call it what it is, marketing is really abysmal.
Hmm.
Cuz like I discovered RPGs like at 19 years old. I was a kid and I fell in love and I realized this was something that I had a knack for and it was something I could do consistently so that I could get better at it. And I realized so quickly that I could either, oh gosh, oh no, I can't remember her name. I can't remember their name, rather. The person who wrote the novel, oh no, Iron Widow.
I wish I
If
knew.
anyone is,
I
it's
could look it up.
they're a Chinese author. They wrote this book. It sounds really good. I haven't read it yet. It's this like polyamorous science fantasy action book. It sounds really cool. Um,
Sharon J.
and
Zhao.
yes, that's who
Yeah.
that is. Thank you so much. But they wrote this book and they have essentially become an influencer in order to make sales.
Right.
Um, they have a huge like TikTok presence. I think they make YouTube videos talking about like Mulan and Disney's adaptations and stuff. And I hope they are having a good time. But I think trying to do that might kill me.
Yeah. I mean, part of why I do this show is an endeavor in networking, or like an endeavor in
Yeah.
networking, endeavor in promoting my work, other people's work. Like, I'm fairly open about this. But
Yeah.
it is. It doesn't feel like a thing that the wizardly author in the mountain should have to do.
Y- yes, there was, oh gosh, I think Aaron Voigt posted about this recently about the death of the misanthrope in authorship. And I struggle to recall something I've related to more strongly. Because yeah, I'm really proud of my work. I think I do good work that people would like if they had the opportunity to read it or to play it. And if I had my way, nobody would know what I looked like.
Yeah.
And I would have my name on it, and anybody could sell my work if they wanted to sort of bring it back. Because I also think about this in relation to my intellectual property, where I would like to make money off of what I do. This is something I'm trying to turn into my career. But when I'm gone, I'm putting it in my will to put everything I've made into the public domain
Yeah.
immediately.
Absolutely.
Because this sort of hanging on to a person's body of work as somehow proprietary,
Hmm.
as this like it's like an SCP.
Yeah.
Does that make
Absolutely.
it's like an anti-meme. It's this bizarre restriction of not only how humans work and how art works in sort of a lofty sense, but how information works.
Yeah.
Of
I
how like it's bizarre how we try to draw fences around ideas.
I have truly zero interest in rent keeping from the grave. Like, that's such a scary prospect. I don't like it.
It's really horrifying. And so I do what, you know, tons of other authors do. All of my works are in Creative Commons, just an attribution license, just, you know, let people know who made the thing you're putting out into the world. And even that is sort of a compromise. Like, in a better world where I had other options of how to make my living, I wouldn't even do that. I would want to be able to put something out and let it stand as
Yeah.
a thing. Um, I I think a lot about making a folk board game
Hmm.
of like inventing a chess type game or like a Go type game
Yeah.
of something where I do all the design work of like implementing, playtesting, like whatever, and then one day I go to the park and I talk somebody up and I say, "Hey, I heard about this game on the internet. Let's play it." And I just let it run wild in the world. And that's sort of like one of my wildest dreams of letting something I made get respect and attention and nobody ever knows who made it.
Yeah. I think like something that I think is really interesting. I think a lot of if I had to be mean to myself and my fellow indie creators, like I think sometimes our aspirations are are to have the sort of thing that you've described, and sometimes I think we can conflate making like boutique expensive books. Maybe not too expensive. You
Yeah.
know, they're reasonably priced, but you know, boutique books uh, for that, and I think that can be an issue. But the idea of that is so enchanting. Of like,
Yeah.
yeah, like just leaving a mark on the world that is not tied to
Yeah.
you. That is just like, yeah. So we need to get like some rocks to play this one. Like that's really cool.
Yeah. No, and that's I one of my favorite board games in the world. Uh and I'm not much of a board game person. I don't know how much you are either, but I love the game Tack,
Hmm.
which is in fact a licensed game based on Patrick Rothfuss's The King Killer Chronicle.
Oh, interesting.
Um and it's sort of a cross between Go and tic-tac-toe is the best way I can describe it.
Oh,
But the way it's designed is such that fans of the game have whole communities online dedicated to making their own sets from scratch because it's that easy. Um, I've seen welders who've made metal sets that use like nuts and bolts literally as the pieces, and it works fine. Um, and that enchants me, which is so bizarre for a licensed board game based on a popular fantasy novel, where it's like this is so inextricably tied up in these ideas of intellectual property and ownership of ideas, and yet it wants so badly to be a game like Go. Nobody knows who made Go. The person who made Go doesn't give a shit if we know that they made Go. It's a good game and it has a life. It's a cultural artifact. And I think a lot of us in trying to make art under capitalism strive to make a piece of art that is alive in the way something only in the public domain could be.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I've been really proud about with Sapphic World is that like there are games that are coming out before it that are inspired by it, which I think is really lovely.
So cool.
And like, things that I think are probably going to come out before it that have like mechanics that are basically rips of mechanics from it. And I think inspiring other people and like, being open with your ideas and like encouraging people to make stuff that is inspired by your work and in conversation with your work is like one of the best things we can do for people coming into the space, for people who've been in the space for a while. Yeah, I totally agree with. I feel like I want to make money because I want to live, but also like I totally agree that my communist fantasy is it would be lovely just to put things out and have them be seen and not worry about the monetary part of that.
I mean, and I think that's what draws a lot of us to RPGs, or at least part of it, is because there's such a strong culture of hacks, right? That's in our vernacular is this idea of, hey, I made a thing. The most incredible, heartwarming thing you could do with it is tear it apart and make something else with it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my brain is like, I'm bouncing. Do you want to hit? Because
okay.
I read ahead of the emails and now I'm thinking about them. Do we want to hit the emails?
Yeah, let's do it.
Please send emails to darlingdemoneclipse@gmail.com because we actually don't have that many, but we only have one. But the one that we did get is really good, so we're gonna give that a look.
That's exciting.
Apocrypha, the email bird, will arrive.
Love these bird characters. I'm such an aunt about it, but I love these little characters.
My little bird characters. The little bird characters on my Game Boy.
Yeah, on your Nintendo.
On my Nintendo, yeah. Oh, by the way, I did not get the 2024 Diana Jones Emerging Designer Program Award. If anyone's curious, just so you know.
Hey, I put Bring the Stars Home. I submitted it for an ENnie, so you got to take the shot.
Yeah, true. No, sorry. I like being open about these things because one, I think it's funny.
Yeah.
And two, I think it's good to be like transparent, not transparent, but to kind of destigmatize being playful.
I think a huge. Yeah, I also think a huge part of why people don't start with careers in the arts is because they have the idea that there are more barriers than there are. I recently got approved for a booth at a local Comic-Con this summer, and it was such an exciting thing, and I have made less than $200 on my games ever. And it's like, yeah, there really is no actual barrier here. I mean, there are plenty of barriers, but
people are delightful and curious and have whimsy in their heart, it turns out.
Yeah.
And you learn this. Like, to be super clear, the thing that I read a second ago about, like, I'm prioritizing by audience size was not a person from the indie space. So it was a person coming in to teach RPGs from outside of it. And I think that's notable. And not that I even really hold anything against that person, because I think, like, that's a mentality that is probably developed, through like through pretty real anxiety about like, am I, am I going to be able to make enough money or like get enough of an audience with the time that I have? And I think
Yeah.
that's super valid. Um, but yeah. Anyways, let's read some emails. um,
Yes, let's do it.
so, we have two questions from VIP question asker Goblin, aka aka Skibbity Bop Umdada. Um, my
Oof.
favorite, my favorite Goblin
The
who asks
prestige.
questions, the prestigious asker. Um, the first question. This is an interesting one. I haven't really thought much about. Thoughts on prehistorical settings for TTRPGs, aka playing with caveman tech and societal
Mm.
structures.
Ooh.
I think it can get real racist real fast, but I don't think that's a reason to necessarily not do it. Um, I think about like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
no, you're absolutely right on how fast it can get racist. The only thing I would say is that from my perspective, as a person who doesn't think about prehistoric settings a lot, is that it seems no less likely to get super racist super fast than all of the pseudo historical settings we already have.
true. I guess my thought my thought is just that like I think the natural tropes for prehistory can be a little bit uh
Yeah.
racist, the like societal like pop cultural tropes. So I think avoiding those would be, if you're doing a prehistorical thing, it should have some, some history, some like you should be like,
Yeah.
or anthropology. It should have like some actual roots in that stuff.
Yeah. I also, and this is such a dodging the question kind of thing, but also question what we mean by prehistory.
Right. True.
I like we know that there were societies that existed that we have no names for, no idea that they existed, except for the fact that they are recorded in passing in the histories of societies we do have records of. Humanity as it exists, sort of like biologically, has been around for what is it, 100,000 years, 50,000 years?
Yeah. Something like that. It's been a while.
Having having an idea what is the distinction in your head between prehistory and history. Do we mean written history? Because that's sort of a 20th century frame for what
Mhm.
history means. Do we mean pre metalworking? Do we like there's so many lines you can draw, all of which are ultimately arbitrary. But if you know and are cognizant of where you draw that line, then you can start having some interesting, like, as long as you're mindful of it, I think you're off to an interesting start.
Yeah. A lot of prehistory as a setting due to wanting a setting without guns and very few blades. Yeah, I guess
Mm,
part of that is like, I guess kind of to Sabrina's point, like what are you adapting? Like what history? What part of history are you
yeah.
adapting, right? Um, a
'Cause yeah.
pre-agricultural RPG would be really fun and really interesting, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot about I read and watch a lot of like speculative biology and speculative evolution. It's very much like just a fun time for me.
Mhm.
Um, and something that I think of a lot is the existence of societies that are perpendicular to our narrative of technological progression.
Hmm.
Of a society like, well, a great example would be classical Greece, where classical Greece was a society that for most of that period of time didn't have iron as
Right.
like a as a material for tools. They were also very mathematically and very scientifically rigorous and very into it. And there are historical figures or pseudo historical figures who we think of as these very smart, sophisticated people who were illiterate because they existed in a world, in a society that didn't have the written word. There's a really famous like anecdote that I love where Socrates is said to have complained about his students taking notes in class because writing all of his lessons down would degrade their ability to properly memorize all of his lessons.
Huh.
And I don't know, this question just got me thinking on like technological progress and our narrative around it. And when you're doing world building, how to construct a society that breaks that narrative, because that to me always results in a more interesting setting and vibrant world than following that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I've done a lot of research and thinking about a lot of like cultures and times and things for my own writing. A lot of it doesn't even get in, but yeah, there was a bit of a creature yawn on your end, which was good. I encourage that. I think there should be more dog sounds.
Oh, did you hear that?
Yeah,
I wasn't
awesome.
sure if that came across. She's crying because she is ready for a walk. She will have to wait, but once the stream ends, it's time for dinner and a little bit of time out.
Hell yeah. Okay. Question 2 from Goblin. How do you adapt mechanics from separate mediums to teach RPGs? I'm talking like would you adapt chutes and ladders into an interesting rule? I have thoughts of this is a I've done this and I think it's really fun.
I think about this a lot too.
Yeah,
because I think
first.
Yeah, well, for me, game design is an inherently adaptational art form. Every game I make to some degree or another is fan fiction. We didn't end up talking about The Tale of Yon, A Tyrant's Throne. But I mean, that's Zelda. We know that's Zelda.
Yeah.
We know what I'm doing there. And I think one of the things that can exercise your design brain faster than anything else is taking one piece of art and turning it into a different medium, a different format. There's classic examples, Dread with the Jenga board. I know of LARPs that use the old PlayStation Move wands as a core component. There's all sorts. It was somebody I saw. It might have been. Bless you.
Thank you.
It might have been Josh over at Ostrich Monkey Games, or it might be someone who they reblogged from, who was making this intense, crunchy, like OSR game where all of its tables of every kind referenced a real Funko Pop figure.
Oh, that's really funny.
And it was this insane, it was a look into a madman's mind. Bless you. And I think my thoughts are that it is easy and fun and you should do it. I don't know if I have much more nuance than that. Is that it play with it. It's a space of play. You are taking something that exists and making something new out of it. That new thing can kind of be whatever you want.
Genuinely, for me, okay, first of all, like, think about things that, like, so, like, adapting mechanics is really interesting, because it's, like, a hard thing to do, to some degree, because, like, you're in different mediums, but there are sometimes things that you can adapt, like, Sapphic World has a thing where, has a move that changes depending on the current moon phase, in real life, and that is inspired by a mechanic from a video game named Lunacid, which also is affected by the current moon phase. I would also honestly go if you have a tabletop simulator, go on Steam Workshop, download a game called God Game, which I've mentioned a couple times before, which is a card game, and just read cards from that. Uh, there are so many cards in that game. They're just like oh, everybody opens Minecraft. Begin fishing. Uh, like clownfish are worth 5 coins. Uh, cod are worth 3 coins,
Yeah.
etc., etc. Um,
Yeah.
I think like thinking
I think. Oh, sorry.
thinking outside the box, thinking laterally is like so useful for coming up with like how do I adapt and play with like what can a TTRPG do, especially like making like artifacts like you know thing like rules and moves that create like physical objects in the real world. Um, I think there's so much that you can learn from looking at games that are willing to like think outside the box, like in a humorous way, or even in a like in kind of a chaotic way, and kind of tightening that into like whatever your design parameters are.
Yeah. I think this also makes me think of a conversation I had last year at some point talking about game feel in tabletop RPGs. And it was a conversation that stuck with me. It's followed me into the development of Clash, which is looking at why something is fun on a sensory level. So like playtesting Clash, we use poker chips a lot because there's a lot of keeping track of points of various kinds that are like going up and down a lot during play. And that adds a very tactile feel. It makes it gives gameplay the same like tension and bravado that you take into a game of blackjack or poker. And that was completely unintentional. I bought poker chips because the store I was at the time didn't have counter dice when I was there. And that's it. That's the reason why. But it has lent such a feel to the game that is sort of unintentionally ported over from the games of bluffing and bidding that those chips are from, because you're pushing these little stacks of pieces forward and it feels like you're challenging somebody. It says, yeah, try me, see if I'm lying. It adds this really interesting dynamic. So using your example of chutes and ladders, what makes that fun? Like, think about what in your fingers, to your eyes, the sound of it, really get to the real baseline of what about that game is play to you, and see how you can adapt that, and see what adapting that does, what sensations, what feelings it produces.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel very very similarly. I miss playing in person for that reason, because I've been playing a lot of online, and it's like I miss because you know games have their like games have those physical qualities that are really wonderful.
Yeah, it's why I prefer dice.
Mhm.
It's very personal. I like dice a lot.
Dice are cool. Dice are fun. Does anyone in the chat have any questions, or feel free to send them to the email, and we'll give them a looky-loo. Otherwise, we might wrap up early. We'll see. Oh, here we go. We got questions from Grief.
Oh, beautiful.
These will probably be our last two, so that'll be perfect.
Sweet.
Okay, this is from good friend Grief so dearly. I'm also working on a game with. So,
wonderful.
As writers who both show their love for the things that inspire them, at what point do you think it's too much bringing that sort of love for other things to the table, especially as it may clash with other players' intentions in the story that you're all trying to tell? Oh, so like, yeah.
So for clarification, you're for Grief, if you're willing to clarify, you're speaking as players coming to the table for an existing game, Is
It
that the
sounds
impression I'm
like
getting?
it.
Okay.
Hmm.
I think, gosh, I have such useless, not useless, but very familiar advice here, which is communication.
Yes.
I think because this is what I tell everybody because I play with a lot of new players. It's just sort of how it's worked out for me in my time with RPGs. The thing I am always telling people is that RPGs are BDSM. And I don't mean that as a metaphor.
I agree.
Like they truly are. And I think the big thing that I take from that understanding of how RPGs work socially, is that in the same way that you wouldn't necessarily not I mean, this isn't true for everybody, but in the same way that you may run into trouble, or you at least are assuming a certain amount of risk when you want to go cruising and sleeping with people who you don't know very well. You also understand that that risk exists for playing games with people you're not very familiar with. Because RPGs require an amount of trust and intimacy that is not that is really underestimated in the culture of play as I've experienced it. I think the big thing that you can do if you're looking to align your goals in terms of like what's inspiring you, what your narrative goals are, is to metagame like you've never metagamed before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Metagaming is in fact a cardinal virtue of social games of every type, because unless you are playing a game whose rules involve specific restriction of communication, at which point that's another thing to negotiate outside the bounds of the game.
Yeah, it's its own thing.
The idea, sorry?
Just saying that's absolutely its own thing.
Yeah. The idea is, ideally, everybody should know what kind of fan fiction you're writing before you get to the table. In the playtests I'm doing at my home table for Clash, we had a pretty long session 0 where our GM for this game pitched the campaign to us, which was, hey, you know that Battle of the Bands scene from the Scott Pilgrim movie? That's this game. And from there, when we went through character creation, we were able to, when we would pitch a character, we'd say, here's my idea for the vibe of this character, for the reference of this character. One character I pitched was, I want to play somebody like Noodle from the Gorillaz, a character who just shows up one day from somewhere and is crazy good at an instrument.
Yeah, that's good.
Or the character I ended up playing, who is, hey, I want to play Kim Pine if Kim Pine was Gaara from Naruto.
God,
and so
awesome.
I'm having a blast at that game. I don't know if you can tell. But basically letting people know what you're being inspired by, saying it outright, and getting buy-in. I don't want to say getting consent, but getting buy-in. Letting people know, here's the fantasy I want to play, here's the cool stuff I want to do, and here's the jokes that I want to make.
Yeah.
And then if this table is, I'm so sorry about the dog noises.
She's
totally very
okay.
insistent. And if you are playing with a group of people who have your best interests at heart, they are going to buy in. They're going to play into your gimmick. And you will play into theirs too. It's going to be going back and forth. That's my very, very long-winded way of saying communication. It's very nice, and it helps prevent these problems from happening before they start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I honestly, I don't know if I can say it better. That was pretty much my thoughts. But besides just the riff of our TTRPGs are like BDSM, and I want to make them more like BDSM.
Yeah,
they're like BDSM structurally. I want to make them be like BDSM aesthetically as well.
that's so perfect. Who was that person who made the it was an expansion for the Wild Sea, I believe.
Oh,
It was I I don't know if you know this. Somewhat an NSFW artist made an expansion for the Wild Sea that was really cool, and
oh,
it might be up your alley.
that sounds sick as hell.
Yeah,
I gotta look into that. That sounds pretty cool. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, let me read Grief's. It's an incredibly good and wonderful answer that I completely agree with, and it's beautifully thought out for a question that is its deepest root in our desire for our in-person game to stop talking about Warhammer all the time. Yeah, that's real.
I also wish I could stop talking about Warhammer.
Fair.
It's
Second,
I don't even play it. I've never played it. Anyway,
our second and last question from Grief is there such thing as too many physical doohickeys or cards in a game? Yeah, when it becomes encumbering. But I think you should always go for more rather than less, and then pare down if you have to. Play-aids are good. Like, you know.
I think there is such a thing as a game with a higher or lower tolerance for doohickeys.
Mhm.
I am a lifelong design by subtraction adherent. I'm very much make the minimal thing that will do what you want in terms of what I write.
I think Star Wars FFG has too many stupid fucking dice in it. So,
Yeah.
I think that there are situations where it's like, because the problem with Star Wars FFG is like there are 4 states. There's success, failure, critical success, and critical failure. But there's like 6 dice.
Yeah. Oh.
And like 6 separate dice with like their own sets of like, or it's not their own set of symbols. It's their own conditions wherein you roll them, and then like
Yeah.
a series of symbols that represent those things. And it's just like, we don't need all this. It's too much. It's too much IMO.
Yeah. I think the answer is always yes, but it's going to be very different based on the game, is my thought. Because I know a lot of people. I mean, listen, Magic the Gathering is a game that exists. I don't think there
real.
is such a thing as a too maximalist game. What I think is the case is that some people like dealing with all of those doohickeys, and some people don't. And as a designer, something to know as early on in development as possible is where on that spectrum you are. I've put a lot of work into minimizing the doohickey level of Clash, because while the core system of pools and bidding from your pools is very fun, I've run down several design dead ends so far that involve overuse of tokens and pools and stuff you have to keep track of. When in a game about simulating Gurren Lagann, that's not what we want. We want those things to be in service of something that's a bit more exciting and a bit more fast-paced. So, as a designer, that's my thought, is figure out where your level is. How does increasing the amount of, let's call it busy work, which isn't very nice, but it's the best word I can think of right now.
Yeah, that's real.
How does that affect how the game feels to play? How does that affect the time spent to play it? And do you want it to affect the game in the way that it is?
Yeah, and what type of player is this game for?
Exactly. Who do you want to be playing this game? As a player, hog wild. No rules, just right. Do whatever you want. I am all about, I love a game that has a lot going on. I at least love to read one. I don't necessarily have the stamina for it in practice, but
yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're gonna wrap up there, so that you can get your dogs, and I can go eat.
Yes. Yes,
So,
I'm very hungry.
thank you for being here. I've showered folks with your links at this point, but I think I
I
will
got a
send
lot of links.
the Clash crowdfunder again because that is, I think, pertinent and present. Grab this game. It sounds and looks really cool. Give it a look.
Yeah.
I think we're going to raid Holly Holotones, who's doing
Ooh.
another bit of I've been on and off watching this, where she's been doing so at one point some group of nerds put together a Wikipedia article called List of Games Considered the Best. And it's fascinating because it tells you so much about the years that they picked and the games that they picked. So
That sounds fascinating.
it's really good. Go give that a watch. Go say hi to Holly, and
Yeah.
I'll be back on Friday with Spencer Campbell of Gila RPGs. So expect that, and take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Remember, if you don't like what you see, you can change it. It's up to you, really. Goodbye, good luck, and have fun